fantastic. It's Tuesday morning. Monday was a bit hectic, but Tuesday's feeling good. I've been getting lots of sewing done this week. The last few weeks, actually, I've been getting quite a bit of sewing done. Got last year's Quilters Playcation Adventure Sewalong quilt top done. I still need to book a long arm time, so I better call after this today. But I'm picking up from a long armor the print version of last year's, which I got basted. I want to quilt it myself. I have plans for quilting it, but I spent the money to get it basted, which is to me worth every penny. I got 2 large quilts basted and it was $135. So thank you, Philippa, Jelena, for doing that. I really appreciate it. I'll see you in a little bit because I'll stop and pick them up afterwards. I've also been working on this, which is another Quilters Playcation, not from the Adventure Sewalong, but from a party, the Cut Sew Repeat party. And the last time I taught it, I came up with this block while we were in the party, and I fell in love with the block and have decided to go for it on making a quilt. So you can see it's 4 blocks. And then it's going to be 4 blocks as well. So 16 in total. I have 2 more to make and then I can put it together. So I'm excited about that. But the reason you are here today is really to talk about this month's Adventure Sewalong. So reminder, in 2022, we are doing them once a month here live on YouTube. And we have a theme. I'm creating a treasure map of sorts for our quilt. So that's guiding how the design of the blocks, and then it will guide sometimes the layout. I think one version of mine will have very much look like a treasure map, or that's the hope, at least. So let's get to it. There's a little sneak peek. Ignore my stars. That's just me playing with scraps. But there's a sneak peek. I got part of the block done last night for you. But I also want to show you, I did part of the abstract version as well. So I just want to have, let me make sure I'm muted. I want to have my computer up so I can see any chats that might come along the way. So feel free to go into the chat, say hello to each other, ask questions. I will keep an eye on it. So if you see me looking to the side, that's what I'm doing. But let's check out the abstract version. See, typically the way I've designed the block, these would go next to each other, but I thought it would look a little more interesting if it's there. So I might do one more set for the whole row, because remember, for the abstract version, I'm doing a row quilt, a little bit different, all in solids, just something to challenge myself for something a little bit different along the way. But for the actual map version, I'm being a little more literal. Obviously it's quilting fabric, so it's not like perfectly literal, and we're doing improv, so we get a little creative. But there is 1/2 of my palm tree. I think it was Michelle, but don't quote me on that. I'd have to double check, who tried a palm tree already, and she struggled with it. And so I challenged myself to come up with a little bit of an easy way to do it. There are curves. Most of the block is curves, but don't be scared. We're just going to do them one seam at a time, one cut at a time. So I've done 1/2 of the block. Now I'm going to do the other half. I determined that it would be easier to do the leaf part, the palm part, in halves, and then a center trunk of the tree. So let's get to it. Put that back up on the design wall over there. And then I'm going to bring you over here. YouTube has the switch camera in a different spot. So there we go. Say hello to the ladies. I've also been enjoying, in terms of decoration on my cutting table, didn't end up starting to be decoration. So this is a map quilt made by Andrea Jackson. She's at Third Story Workshop on Instagram, and then a tile that one of my daughters made. It's just my little two fantasy places I would like to be, Nova Scotia and a tropical beach. But look at that palm tree. There's some inspiration for us. I didn't even clue into that. And there is the cutting table for us. Okay, we have the tripod sorted this week. So what do we need to make each half? We need a bigger portion of background fabric. I'm kind of making it about as wide as I'll end up half of the tree being. You want it to be, this is going to be a bigger block, because if we go really small with those curves, it's going to be very tight and a little bit more difficult to do. Not impossible. I would probably, what's that? I wouldn't go smaller than 3 inches. 4 would be better. This is 6 and a bit. I just freehand cut it. So I'm just looking now. So we're between 6 and 7 inches here. And I think I'll have enough in all of this. And then I have some strips for the palm fronds. I just went into the scrap bin and I had this great Tula pink fabric, which I thought was really kind of fun. Lots of texture for our palm fronds. So I have some different lengths, but you want them to be, for the most part, at least as long as this strip here. If they're a little bit shorter, that's fine, because we're actually going to cut a bit shorter probably, but you don't want them like half the size. You want them to be close to the same size. So if they're not exactly the same, that's fine. Work with what you have. But if you are cutting fresh fabric, I'll probably, and in fact, I'll do that now. I don't need this extra bit on here. So I am just going to cut it off and have those be scraps ready to go for something else. Okay, and I'm just going to give that a little quick press. It is good to start with pressed fabrics. Whenever we're doing improv curves, though, you don't want to start with starched fabrics. You want that fabric to have that little bit of movement in it. So that's for the palm fronds part. I don't actually need the ruler right now, so I'll move her aside. That's for the palm fronds part. For the trunk, you're going to need the same or a very similar background fabric, and then you're going to need something for the trunk. So I chose this brown with a little bit of blue in it because I thought it played nicely with this sort of bluey green in the background of the Tula fabric. And just to be a little less predictable, a little less on the nose in terms of fabric selection and colors and stuff. So I'm going to set aside the trunk portion. We're only going to work with this. Now I'm doing the right side of the palm tree first. It doesn't really matter which one you do first. I'm just going to show you. We have a right and a left, right? So that side, and then I'm doing this side, and then we're going to seam them up the middle. I did 3 on this side. I'm only going to do 2 over here because I think it'll look a little bit better. Nature isn't super symmetrical all the time, and odd numbers kind of prevail. So I'm going to go 2 on this side, 3 on this side. You can change the angles of these kind of in any way that you want. But I did find, I tried it one way where I was working with strips, and I didn't strips of the background, and I didn't like it as much as having a single piece of background to build on. So that's what we're going to do. So we're doing curves. I'm just going to move that to the side a little bit. We're doing curves, which means we're layering our fabrics right sides up. You're going to use your rotary cutter. You can use scissors if you want, but I like my rotary cutter. And you're going to cut that first curve. Now, I don't want to have them, I've learned this lesson in making my sample blocks. If you line up the bottom of the blocks, when you cut, if you want to cut a nice big curve, you're going to be left with very little of the palm frond fabric. So I'm just moving that up just a little bit. And then I'm going to cut a curve. This is going to be the bottom of the block. So just cutting a gradual curve. I'm right-handed, so I cut right to left. If you're left-handed, you're going to cut that way. Can put that aside for scraps or garbage. And then all we're doing is we're sewing these 2 pieces together. Because they're curves and they don't line up and they don't pin, that's fine. This is how I like to start. I'm only worrying about lining up 1 inch at a time, and then I'm going to move around the block. So for those of you new to curves, let's go over the machine so you can see what I do. I get in. I want to have my machine set to stop with the needle down so that when I need to adjust, I don't have to worry about moving the whole piece. The needle is staying there. And we want to just guide it through the machine. We're not pulling. If you find yourself pulling, that's the time to pick up the presser foot and guide it again. I'm only worrying about sort of that inch in front of the machine at any one time. At the end of the seam, make your life easier. Put in a scrap of fabric, fold it over. Because your needle's stopping and the needle down, it will hold that in place, and then you don't have to cut your thread or hold your threads. So there's my first one. I'm going to press that. It really wants to press towards the background, but I'm forcing it to press toward the palm leaf. I think my palm leaves are big enough that it can handle the bulk of that seam. If yours are a bit smaller, like on my abstract one, they're a little bit smaller, I press towards the background. But I kind of want to force this so that my pom-poms really kind of pop out from, that didn't feel right. See, I gotta, when I was pressing, I had one flipping in the wrong direction. And I could feel that on the front. And we definitely want to press after each seam. Okay. Steam is your friend on these ones. So now we're going to go back over here and I'm going to layer this on top. I'm not so much interested in doing a parallel curve. I kind of want that point at this end, and there's a couple of ways to achieve that. We can cover this all the way back over and do a complete new cut. You might want to either take note of where the edge of your palm frond fabric is so you can feel it. I can feel it right there. Or put that on top. It really doesn't matter. Now, to get the point down here, you're going to want to start your cut either in somewhere like here, there, or just right at the very edge. You can see on here, I don't quite have a point like I do on this one, but play around with it. It doesn't have to be all the same on each one. Just have some fun. So I'm going to go like this, and I'm going to have it be wider towards the center seam. So you see that cut, right? Narrower on this side, wider there. And then we just repeat the process. We take it back over to the machine, we sew, we press, just like that. I hope that's making sense to everybody. Making this block, I was like, oh, I really could use a tropical vacation. Who couldn't, right? Who couldn't? But that's not in the cards because I have other travel booked for later in the year. But I guess it's going to, I will be near the ocean. So I'm sure there's going to be palm trees where we are, but there we go. That's the first one. For those of you who don't know, I will be going to Egypt this summer, which I'm really excited about. I'm so excited for my girl. My daughter has qualified for World Championships in her chosen sport. And the first competition is in Alexandria, in Egypt along the Mediterranean coast. And then the second one is in Istanbul. So we're going to both places and hopefully a few others in between. Pretty excited about that. Okay, so there's our first one. Pretty straightforward. We're already getting some distortion on the edges. Don't worry about that because we'll square it up. So now I'm going to take another one of my strips. I have a wider one and a narrower one. Both will work. You don't want to go too narrow because you just want to have the wiggle room. I'm going to take the wider one, and I'm actually going to, rather than keeping it kind of straight here, I'm going to move that on the angle so that I can do this cut and have a lot of room. If I do this and I make that cut, it means I don't have as much room on the top. So I'm just trying to give myself some kind of play space. And then what you want to do is also come and cut over this edge, right? You can see they kind of overlap here. You don't want them to be individual. You want them to look connected, like a real tree would. So I'm going to go like that. It's not as much of a curve, but it's there. So again, see, I'm building, so I'm going to add those two pieces together. And who knows what creative influence I'm going to get from this trip this summer. I'm excited to see what might happen. You never know, right? You never know. Maybe next year's Adventure Sewalong will be Egyptian inspired or Turkish inspired. I know visually there's going to be so much. Historically, there's so much. Travel is a great privilege, and I do not take it lightly. So I'm going to get as much as I can out of it. So there we are. Now I'm going to add the background one last time. See, I have, because I'd cut that little bit, I'm just going to pull that off. You can use your seam ripper if you need to. And I want to make sure I have a point here. So I'm really kind of covering that up. You can see, I can feel where my edge are, so I can kind of go to here. So I know this line on the cutting mat. Oh, and then I move it. So we'll try that again. Yep, there we go, that line. So I'm going to kind of cut this curve to have that palm frond there, like that. So it'll be a little bit bigger. That's good. I want some variation in there. And it's the same technique every time we're sewing. Stop and pivot your machine, or pivot your fabric without, so you're doing that instead of pulling it constantly. Okay. See how I got that nice point? Because I cut over both of them. You can see that a little bit on the scrap. So I'm going to press that, and then we're going to join our two halves together. Palm trees are just one of those things that, for me, coming from Canada, not northern Canada, but Canada itself, signal vacation for me, because we don't have them here at all. So it's always like, oh, look, there's palm trees. We're such nerds. So there we go. There we have our two halves together. We can make our lives super simple and just do a nice straight line there, which is exactly what I'm going to do. So first I'm going to cut, you can layer them like this and then cut that straight line. But what I'm going to do is I'm actually just going to cut them individually to see where they're at. Right? I'm not worried about the outside edges or anything like that. I'm just cutting a nice straight line on what will be that middle seam, because then I can kind of wiggle where they actually get lined up. They're not the same height. Don't worry about that. Right? So now I can kind of play. Let's move that up a little bit. Play with where they go, right? I can have them kind of offset a little bit more, offset that way. If I do this, they're actually going to line up fairly well. I think I want them offset just a little bit. Just which way do I want them offset? I think I want it offset this way. The only thing is you don't want to like, if I pull it down too much, when I go to square this up, I'm going to lose a lot of this bottom. But you could always add, you know, more fabric along the bottom if it's not quite the height that you want. But remember, we have to add our trunk. So at some point that trunk's going to come up to here as well. So I'm just going to go ahead and sew those together. See how I have this excess fabric here? I know I'm not making that block taller, so I'm just going to cut that off so it's less to sew. And now I'll sew straight down there. I found that doing it in halves just manages these curved seams a little bit more and potential distortion if you were trying to do both sides kind of at the same time. Here we go. It's going to get a little bit wonky. There is one, I wouldn't say it's a problem. It creates a bit of a design challenge at one point, and I'm going to show you that next. So you can press your seam to one side or open. It's up to you. I'm actually going to go, I don't normally go open. I don't often go open, let's say. But this case I am, because I don't want to emphasize one side over the other. So I'm going to go open, because why not? Just give that a really good press, a shot of steam. Will help things lay where they want, or where you want them, I should say. So there we go. That's fun. There's my palm. Right? This one, I kind of wish I'd gone a little bit narrower here. Or a little more kind of curved that way, but it works. It's going to work. Okay. So again, I'm just going to leave the edges for now. We might want to do some things, right? We can add bits to the sides if things aren't feeling like, especially here, see how it gets narrower? You can always add, right, something like that to the side and just make that a little bit bigger. And then when you go, you know, maybe you have a longer piece here and then you can square that up. Again, entirely up to you. But I'm going to go ahead and work on this bottom portion. Now we know palm trees tend to be very tall and skinny. So, oh, look at that. I'm like almost the same width. So I'm going to cut myself, you know, a big piece here to work with. Give this a little press because I don't want that seam in the middle. And then it's just a matter of making the two cuts for the trunk and then sewing these two together. Now, one of the things, this is the design challenge here. I'm not going to have the trunk join up here, right? So I may end up, I mean, this is going to come in when I piece anyways, but I'm not going to have that trunk right in the middle. If that really bothers you, you could applique it on instead of doing this piecing, but this is going to give the overall idea of the palm tree, so I'm totally fine with it not going there. So now we have our fabrics. They're again placed right side up. I want a nice kind of sway or curve, and my volcanoes kind of come this way, so I'm going to try to have it be this way, but it is going to be a bit wider at the bottom, like that. So pull this piece away and you can see where I'm going to go, and then this, I'm going to come up like that. So it doesn't really matter in this case which one goes on the bottom. Again, it's going to look like this, but I've got curves in both directions here. So we've just got to work slowly with these. Make sure at the beginning I'm lined up. And then I'm just gonna move as I go. You don't want to do giant pivots because that's where you'll get little tucks. Always making sure your fabric is laying smooth underneath your needle. So again, you don't get tucks. Just go slow. There we go. That's it. There's one. Let's go press that. That presses out quite nicely. Nice smooth curve along there. And then we'll make the second cut. Right, I'm going to keep it layered with this on top so that I can really see that curve. I never moved that fabric underneath, so I should be great all along the way. So now I'm just going to kind of do this curve. I just got to actually swap sides with you because I'm right-handed. I can feel, yeah, I'm totally fine. Double check. I'm aiming to about there. And there's the base. Remember, it's going to get a little bit narrower. And I'm actually going to sew this from the bottom because I always like to have my concave on the bottom if it's that straight long curve. So we're sewing it upside down, but that works. That works. So you can see again. Okay. So we have that curve. We'll just press that. And then we'll do the last seam. So I hope I broke this down into pretty straightforward, yet very clearly a palm tree. Probably could have made the trunk a little bit skinnier, but it is what it is. Thought it was going fairly skinny, but maybe not. Okay. So there we go. Now we have to join these two. Now this is where I said, right, because I don't have that kind of going right up to it. If I want it to be right up to it, I'm actually going to lose some of the points of this. So here's a couple of suggestions. This is the one I made, so I'm working with it. Here's a couple of suggestions. You can make these curves, these very first curves, at much more of a closer to like a 30 or 45 degree angle up in there. So that way, when you cut off the bottom to join it to here, you won't be losing any of these along the way there. So that's one way to do it. I'm just going to join them and not care that these don't meet because I think from a visual point of view, it still tells the right story. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to lay these right sides together, and I'm going to lay it so that my pom poms are kind of at least close to the center. And then I'm just going to cut a straight line across here and sew those together. I see Connie, she has already emailed me to tell me a few things about Egypt, which is awesome because she and her wife have been there. And she assures me I will see date palms when I am there, which makes me very excited. But I'm going to ask a dumb question, and I know it's a dumb question, or unless you're one of those people who says there are no dumb questions. Is that where dates actually come from, or are they just called date palms? I don't know these things. I love dates, especially stuffed with blue cheese. But I don't know if that's where dates come from. Okay, so as always, let me do this last press and then we'll reveal the block. This was a fun one. I liked it. Just something a little bit different, but yet still very much reads like a palm tree. Give it a good press. Use your flatter if you need to. I'm not going to square mine up at this point. I will wait till later, but there is the block. There's our palm tree, right? See, it doesn't matter that they don't totally match up there. It still gives us the total overall idea of a palm tree, and I'm pretty excited about it. So, okay, Connie confirms that yes, they do come from the date palm tree. So I'm excited about that. I know my husband will be too. I've only ever had them dry, not fresh, so we'll see. So there is the classic traditional. It seems really odd to say that for an improv block, but the more literal, let's say. And then there is the abstract version. So we've got two different versions. So on the abstract version, I did the same thing, two halves, right? You could just do one. You could have just a single palm frond. I like the repetition of it. And I liked, like, it almost looks like claws reaching, fingers reaching to each other. But it's just kind of fun. It's supposed to be abstract so that it gives the idea of what we're building here, which is the palm, but not quite literal at all along the way there. So those are our two blocks for today. I'm going to bring you back up. We will say hello and goodbye to the ladies again. Now we'll flip you around. Hi. That's month 4 of our Quilters Playcation Adventure Sewalong. I'm pretty excited for where this is going. I think it's going to be really fun as we continue on. Got a couple of neat ideas coming down the pipe for things. Remember, you can share this video off of YouTube. Like, if you're not subscribed yet, I hate this part of YouTube, but you can subscribe. You can tell your friends to subscribe so they get notifications of when these lives are coming up. Otherwise, I'm going to try to let you know. The other thing I'm going to do, hopefully later this week, is I do have all of last year's Adventure Sewalong videos in one place on Instagram. So I need to do a video to show you where they all are. And so that they're easy to find in case you missed any, or want to do them again, or want to share them with somebody along the way. So that's month 4. What else do I have going on? Just working away on stuff. I've got to get this quilt and last year, the print version, I need to get those done for a show that's in 3 weeks. So lots of work to do there. And baby quilts, wedding quilts, all that fun stuff. We have one more live Quilters Playcation event that is going to be on May 12th. We're having one more play date, and I actually have a few games set up. So I'm hoping we get a good crowd there, because I think the more we have, the more fun these games will be. Just a really lighthearted, you know, something fun to do, not your typical kind of quilting event. Not necessarily going to teach you a new block or anything like that. We're just going to have fun and hang out and play some games. So I have some games sorted out for that. So I hope you're all having a great month. I will continue to have a great month. It is birthday month for a lot of people in my family, and I had the worst birthday last year, so anything is going to be better this year. So I'm excited for that, and just keep sewing, just keep playing. That's all I want to see you do, is enjoying yourself, being creative, being experimental, having fun, because this is fun. This is absolutely fun. So thank you, everybody. Have a great time. We will see you on Instagram at Cheryl Arkison. You will see me on the Quilters Playcation website and on the Cheryl Arkison website. And here, as always, you know where to find me. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.